Breakdowns in Bed with me, Brent Lindstrom of Light Minded Arts, where I am still recovering from surgery. So, today I want to break down my very first short film that I ever did. It was called Never Talk to Pears When Walking Downstairs. So, I came up with a story idea one day while I was at the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival in one of their workshops. It seems that while most people were trying to figure out how to do non fictional stories, I was trying to figure out how to do fictional ones. So when it came time to actually share the ideas we'd brainstormed, no one really caught on to my vision. But that didn't really matter because I had an idea and I wanted to do it. Now, at the time, Film Riot was doing a 1 minute short film contest, and I thought, okay, I got an idea, I got a motivation, I gotta make a movie. Now, as every film student goes, whether you're in an accredited program or if you're like me and just studying filmmaking on your own, you eventually gotta make a film. And even if you don't have a budget, like I didn't have one at this time, you still need to practice making it with what you got. So I grabbed the few resources I had. I had a Sony Cybershot, I think it was an RX 100, a really small camera, not meant for this kind of thing. I didn't have any audio recording equipment, but I knew that audio was important. So I found a rental house, literally a house that was renting out equipment, and I rented out a boom pole with a shotgun mic and a Zoom recorder. I also borrowed some lights with some umbrellas from my uncle, and since I didn't have any classmates for any film school I was actually going to, or any real friends, I guess for that matter, I used family. So my actress is my mom, and there's also another actor in there, the voice actor, and you can actually see his lips in the pair. That is my dad. And my sister did makeup. So how did I make a short film like this with the meager resources I had? Well, I had a model home at one of my construction sites that I decided to borrow for that day. Granted, I had to kind of pull my film equipment aside when a salesperson would walk through with a client, but it was free, so I got to use it. On the countertop, I set out some canning jars and a fake newspaper that I printed. To get a nice cinematic opening, I wanted to have a slider movement here. But I didn't have a slider. I didn't even have a tripod, really. And so what I did is I stacked two ladders next to each other and put a plank between them. I tried running the camera across the plank, but it was too rough and the camera jittered like crazy. So instead, I stuck a couple of hardback books on there and I put the camera on the books, held it with my hand, and I slid the books across the plank and got a lot smoother action. Check it out. Whoa, big deal, right? But I did this for the opening scene and for the closing scene, and it's not that big of a deal. I probably could have done that handheld, but I was learning, and I thought it actually turned out pretty good because then I was able to stop and focus on the obituaries. And if you look at the obituaries, you'll see yours truly, handsome as ever, and you'll even see our main actress, Deanne Lindstrom, there. And if you were to actually read the fine print, I think you would find out that it was talking about the movie. I can't really tell because I can't really see the fine print anymore. Now, some of these edits actually ran together really fast because when I was doing this, I had about 2.5 to 3 pages worth of screenplay that I had written for this. And, you always hear that every page equals about a minute. And I thought, you know what, this is so simple and so basic. I don't think you can tell the story in just one page. So I had close to 3 pages here, and I realized when I finally went to the edit room that yes, 3 pages generally does equal about 3 minutes of screen time. So it was a real challenge to whittle this down to just a single minute to meet the contest guidelines. All right, so here was big snag number one in the edit room. I did not realize that you needed to keep a close eye on your reflections. As she opens and closes this glass cabinet door, guess who you could see in the glass? Me and my camera. and that was not part of the shoot. So I had to actually learn how to mask out on this and uh, do a little bit of replacement so that you could not tell that I was in the reflection. Hey, there's my mom, as she probably looked without all of her old lady makeup on. Like I said, this was a model home. Most of the furnishings were taken care of, so I only had to put in a few minor props, and this picture was one of them. The canning jars were another. It was super basic, super easy. Did a lot of this on the cheap. When it came time to do this next shot, I needed to dolly the camera around my actress and around the table. However, if you remember right, I said I didn't have much of a tripod. That's only partially true. I did have a tripod, but it was a photographer style tripod that I'd borrowed from my sister. It had locking heads on it instead of fluid heads, and it didn't have any casters on it. So what I ended up doing is I went onto my construction job site and I found a dolly there that we'd used for moving a lot heavier items, and I put a piece of plywood on it, then rested the tripod on top of that, and I was able to push it across the floor and around the table. Luckily, the floor was a hard laminate floor instead of tile or carpet, because even with that, I still struggled keeping the tripod balanced. It kept wanting to bounce around and shake a lot. But after several tries, we were able to get a smooth, fluid motion around the table.
Good morning.
George?
Just me.
Alright, now for this one, this is my dad. Kind of. It's his lips. So what we did for this one, my camera, as I mentioned, was an RX100. It shoots in 8-bit color, which means that you cannot do much color changing on it, or else you get some really nasty artifacts and noise showing up. So what we did on this is we painted his lips green and kind of a skin around his lips. It was actually kind of hard because we'd get it done and then we'd still keep filming our main actress and his paint would start wearing off and we had to reapply and reapply. It's the old adage, hurry up and wait. Well, he waited so long that his makeup kept going bad on him. But eventually it was his time to shine. We got some video of him and then he was pretty well done for the day. I think he spent probably half a day waiting for us to film him for about 5 minutes. Pretty big waste of time for him.
Most of my friends are dead too. They're in your cellar. Old pears turn into beautiful young trees, but old ladies just die. Hey, forget about it. I'd like to see my old buddies.
You want to see my cellar?
Yeah, just for a minute.
Okay.
See that match cut I just did? Pretty cool, huh? Didn't quite turn out as epic as I was hoping it would, but hey, I just learned about match cuts, and so we gave it a try.
I've always preserved.
Now, obviously, I didn't want to push my mom down the stairs for real. So we did a montage scene where we just combined a whole bunch of things, throwing a fake pear down the stairs, throwing slippers around. In the end, I felt like it was a pretty convincing way to do a falling scene. Alright, so in this clip here, you'll notice we've got a hard concrete floor right here. I did not want to make my mom smack her head into the concrete floor because obviously that would hurt really bad. And at the same time, if she didn't come down and hit it really hard, it would look completely fake. So what do? I came up with this idea of having her resting her head and her hand on the concrete and then quickly flinching up. And then when we went to go edit, I reversed the shot so that it looked like she was coming down really fast. And I think in the end it looked really good. There's that slider again, made out of a plank and some ladders. The hardest thing about filming with this little consumer point-and-shoot camera was that its battery only lasted about 30 minutes, and I had a whole day's worth of shooting to do on it. But, I kind of expected this to happen, so I brought the charger, only to find out that when that camera was charging, it couldn't film. So every time we did a shot, we had to quickly plug the camera back in to recharge a little bit of juice so that we could get another few seconds of camera. I brought in an extension cord so that I could plug it up to the camera while it was on the tripod, but you still had to wait a little while for it to charge before you could shoot, and sometimes you were never sure if it would die on you in the middle of a shoot. Kind of annoying. Here's my fake newspaper again with the title of the production on it. I had to put the title there because it was too short to actually add a title sequence to it and keep it under 1 minute. Got my little bio about me, have the cast and crew here. It says Story by BC Crow. That was a pen name I was using at the time for some of my trunk novels. If you go to my website, you can find some of those if you're at all interested. My newest novels are definitely better. Alright, so what did I end up spending on something like this? The budget came in at about $150. Where was it? Well, it wasn't in the camera, and it wasn't in the lights. It was a little bit in the audio because I needed to get a rental for that. My actors and crew did not require any money because they were family and they worked for free. Thank you very much to them. I did have to buy a couple of minor props, but that wasn't too big of a deal. In the end, this was a very inexpensive shoot, and I think we pulled it off pretty darn good. So here's the big question. Did I end up winning that Film Riot contest? No. I didn't even get an honorable mention. But that didn't really matter because I did get one thing, a completed short film. And you know what? As a filmmaker, you got to make a film. And you know what? Even if you don't have the best equipment, this goes to show that you don't always need it. It does make it a lot nicer to have it, and I was definitely planning on buying some for my next shoot after going through this. But sometimes you just got to get out there and start shooting. Thank you for joining me on this breakdown of Never Talk to Pears While Walking Downstairs. Please like and subscribe and visit my website at www.lightmindedarts.com. Till next time.